Yes, and so he pays that man, no, never mind, he stops. And the man was kind of, frustrated that he stopped. And he said, didn't you see me waving you on? He says, I got to pay my toll. He says, well, there was a car ahead of you. And he said that the man coming behind me is Dr. E. Edward Jones, and here is his toll. I waved you on because your toll is already taken care of. My brothers and sisters, God done already paid your toll. That's why you're here. That's why you eating good. That's why you looking good, because God done already paid it.
Yes, Lord.
Done paid your toll. God is our provider. But let me show you something. We noticed when we were talking about the sheep that there are sometimes wolves that will get after a sheep. Yes, they are. There's some wolves that will sometimes try to devour them and make them their supper. Yes, and we get now here to the place where he is talking about the host. He brings us out of the field, places us in the guest room, but there are still enemies even in the guest room. It's right there in the text. He says, you prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. Yes, there's still enemies. Even if you come out of the field into the house, there's still enemies. Yeah, see, he concludes talking about the sheep with the idea of death. He talks about death. He concludes, immortality with the idea of the shadow of death. As we walk through the valley. Now he comes here and he says, you prepare a table for me in the presence of my enemies. And I stop by, I want to drop this on you so that you can go home with hope in your life, hope in your heart, inspiration to make it another day, an inspiration to have dreams in front of you, inspiration to know that you can take it, you can make it. Yes, it's right here in the text. See, God don't promise us that we won't ever have an enemy. God don't promise us that there won't be somebody who will be hating on you. God don't promise us that there won't be somebody who will be putting their foot out trying to trip you. God don't promise us that there won't be somebody who will be laying a trap for you. God don't promise us that there won't be somebody digging a ditch for you. But I stop by to tell you what he does promise us is that he will prepare a table for us in the presence of him. In other words, what God is saying is that just because somebody don't like you, don't mean it will stop you. Can I say that again? Yes, too many of us have determined our destiny by who like us. Too many of us have determined our destiny by who's in the presidential seat. So many of us have determined our destiny, by this limitation or that limitation. But I stopped by to tell you today, it don't matter who's in the White House. It matters who's in God's house. Can I get a witness? Yes, he prepares a table for me in the presence of my enemies. They still there. They still around the table there, still hanging out in the hallways, but God still let me eat. Can I get a witness? He'll do it for you. Yes, we got enemies come in different shapes and sizes. The Bible talks about the world, the flesh, and the devil. Yes, you got to watch out for the world. The world will try to pull us in and ensnare us. make us dependent upon it. Yes, it'll look good. It'll look enticing. The world and in the flesh, you know, it has its own set of cravings, you know.
Yeah.
Yes, you got to watch out for every desire. Every desire is not necessarily a good desire. Then we got the devil walking around like a roaring lion, seeking whom he may devour. We got some enemies that want to destroy us. And my brothers and sisters, as soon as you sign your name on the dotted line, as soon as you say, sign me up for the Christian Jubilee, yes, Satan then takes note of that. Yes, you're a defector. Yes, Satan takes note of that. Yes, you done switched jerseys. Satan takes note of that. Yes, you're a traitor.
Yes. New team.
Yes, have you ever wondered why sometimes it takes a long time? Wonder why it sometimes takes a long time for the murderers to get caught? Do you really wonder why sometimes? Yes, because Satan ain't worried about them. They're on his team. Yes, it's only when you join up forces with God. It's only when, yes, you become a part of God's army. Yes, that then Satan takes special note of you. It's then that he pays special attention to you. I encourage you, don't you get discouraged because you got more folk trying to pull you down since you came to Jesus than you had ever when you were clubbing, when you were living in the world, when you were doing your thing. But I stopped by to let you know. Yes, just keep hope alive. Yeah, you just keep on dreaming. You keep on believing. You keep on trusting. Yes, God will bring you out and he'll set a table up for you. Sometimes you go into a restaurant and get a good hostess. They'll ask you before they ever seat you down, before they ever move you from the waiting area. Do you want a table or a booth? Yeah, they're trying to make you comfortable. They want you to be seated where you want to be seated. Yeah, God prepares a table.
My Lord.
My brothers and sisters, I gotta hurry on. But he says in the text, you anoint my head with oil.
Yes.
Oil is a symbol of joy. A symbol of gladness. And oftentimes when there is an absence of oil, it represents a sign of mourning, a sense of sadness. But God says here in the text, you can lift up your head, O ye gates. Did you get it? God says here in the text that you can wipe away tears from your eyes. God is saying here in the text that you can get up now and walk upright. Because the Lord anoints our head with oil. Oil of joy. Oil of gladness. I know sometimes life can get you down. I know that sometimes our circumstances can bring you to your knees. I know that sometimes, like that old song, joy and pain, like sunshine and rain. Somebody know what I'm talking about. Yes, my brothers and sisters, sometimes life can do that to you. Life can sometimes bring you down. But I stopped by to tell you that God will instill within us a new hope, a new dream, a new goal. If we would just trust Him if we would just have faith in him, if we would just believe in him and just hold on to God's unchanging hand. He'll do it for you. He'll take you from where you are to where you need to be. God will fill us with joy and gladness. Listen. He says, my cup runs over. God gives me so much joy that I can't contain it. God gives me so much joy that I can't keep it to myself. Catch this. When God began to do a new thing in your life, when God began to work in your life, when God began to bring rays of sunshine and hope in your life, don't try to contain it. Don't try to bottle it up and package it and keep it for yourself for a rainy day. No, you don't have to do that. Yes, God will allow our cup to overflow so that we can share it with somebody else. There's somebody else who got a frown. There's somebody else who's been crying. There's somebody else, yes, on the verge of a nervous breakdown. There's somebody else, yes, who feel hopeless and helpless. There's somebody else who's frustrated. Don't try to keep it to yourself. Let them know that the joy of the Lord is my strength. You've been trying to figure out how it is that I got a smile on my face. You trying to fit, you know what I've been going through. You know my circumstances. There's folk on your job. They know what you're going through. They know what you've been through. They know that you done lost this relative. They know that you done lost this son or daughter. They know what you've been through. But what they can't understand and what they don't know is how it is that you still walking upright. What they don't know is how it is that you still got joy in your heart. What they don't know is how it is that you can still smile. This joy that I have. Oh, the world didn't give it to me. Yes, and the world didn't give it, and the world can't take it away. Oh, yeah, and you can just run with that right there, and you can say this peace. You can say this love. Yeah, the world didn't give it, and the world can't take it away. That's why I can still smile. That's why you can still smile. That's why you can still have joy. It's because it's not their property. It belongs to God. It says, God always have leftovers. A meal after the meal. Growing up, leftovers were commonplace. Yes, there will always be a little chicken left over. There will always be a little fish left over. There will be something left over. Leftovers were commonplaces. Leftovers was good. Leftovers sometimes become lunch, maybe even breakfast. Can I get a witness? Yes, it's good to have leftovers. Yes, late night snacks sometimes. Leftovers. God provides leftovers. My cup runs over. You remember Jesus feeding those folk? Nobody remembered to bring lunch for that size. As a matter of fact, they didn't even know the size of the crowd would even grow that large. Just folks start tagging along. Folks start lining up, getting in the group. Go through this town. Folk would get in the group. Yes, but no problem for Jesus. Yes, bring me that little boy's lunch. Bring me those fish and loaves. Yes, Jesus says, set them down and I'll take care of them. And after he got done grouping them up and sitting them down, yes, he made sure that everybody was fed and full. Yes, but then he told them to drive the point home, I want you to go and gather up the fragments. And after they had gotten done gathering up the fragments, they had basketfuls of fragments. And my brothers and sisters, I want you to know, God can give you some overflow in your life.
Yes, he can.
My cup runs over. I got to sit down now. Yes, but can I just say a little something? about verse 6 before I sit down? Yes, he says, surely. I'm getting excited right about here. Yes, he says, surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. How many of us can say that we are continuing to receive after the event is over? After the wedding reception, we're still full. How many of us can say that after the bridal shower, we're still full? After the banquet, we're still full? Not many of us. But God will work it out in our lives to ensure that our lives are still benefiting from his blessings in the days to come, in the weeks to come, in the months to come. We'll still be benefiting from the blessings that God placed in our lives. Long after those other benefits come to an end. This event, hosted by the Lord, unlike any other, has eternal benefits. Look at it. Can I show you the promise of his provision? He said the promise of his provision is goodness. See, God will provide us with his goodness. When we feel like there's nothing but sadness and sorrow in our life, when we feel like there's nothing but devastation and defeat in our life, God will come by, knock on our door, and he will give us a visitation of his goodness. Listen, there's the promise of his provisions of goodness in our lives. He said, surely goodness. But then there's the promise of his protection in our lives. He follows up goodness with mercy. And you do know that mercy is withholding the rightful judgment that we deserve. Yes, we deserve to be slaughtered. We deserve, to be punished for our sins. We deserve this and that. But God says that surely goodness God gives us the promise of his protection in our lives. Yes, and listen here. When he, not only does he promise that we'll have, provisions and protection in our lives, but he says that they'll be walking around, following us. Wherever we go, they'll be tagging along, over our shoulder. Wherever we are in life, goodness and mercy will be right there with us. He's just that kind of a God. Oh, yes, he is. Yes, they endure. Yes, how long do they endure? He says it right there in the text. All the days of my life. Yes, and then he gives us this bonus. He says, he gives us the promise of his presence. When you ain't got nothing else, thank God for his presence in our lives. He says, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord. Yes, the promise of his presence. When we ain't got nothing else, God says, I will not leave you nor forsake you. When you don't have nothing else, you can have the promise of his presence that he will go with us. How long? I'm glad you asked. For him. Yes, for the length of days, however long you are existing. Listen, he ended the first section in mortality. He ended the first section with the shadow of death hanging over our heads. But he ends this section with eternity in our view. He ends this section with forever. He ends this section with eternity, because every believer, every born-again child of God can rest and relax in the promise of God that we shall be with him, that we shall enter the gates of pearl, that we shall walk the streets of gold, that we shall. Yes, Lord. Oh, yes, he promises us that it's going to be all right. Not only is the Lord my shepherd, yes, slain from the foundation of the world, but he is my host. Yes, that faithful servant of God. Yes, he will invite us to the wedding feast. He will invite us. And as I sit down now, I just want you to know this, that my hope is built on nothing less than Jesus' blood and righteousness. I dare not. Amen. Before we have a taste of faith, amen, we want to have a taste of the word. Psalms number 23. Psalms number 23. We began this on last week. Amen. We want to give the final message today on this portion of keeping hope alive. Amen. If you're able and if you don't mind, we share from the New King James Version. If you would stand with us for a brief moment, if you're able. And there we find these words from the New King James. The Lord is my shepherd. I shall not want. He makes me to lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside the still waters. He restores my soul. He leads me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. For you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil. My cup runs over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Amen. You may be seated. I want to share with you a message that is a continuation of last week's message. My hope. Last week is in my shepherd. Today, we want to look at part 2. My hope is in the host. The host. And this 23rd number of Psalms shares with us God's provisions, God's care in the life of believers. And as he shares with us God's care and God's concern and compassion in our lives, he starts out in the first 4 verses of this 23rd number of Psalms by using the allegory of a shepherd. And then he picks up in verse 5 and 6, and then he uses the allegory of a host. Both of these are 2 things that are very familiar in the life of David, the psalmist of this particular number. He knows about the life of a shepherd because he was one. He was a shepherd boy out in his father's field, tending to the sheep. So certainly he can testify as to what life is like in terms of being a shepherd to sheep. And, but then he, on the other hand, became king. And as a king, he knew something about being a host. As a king, there were plenty of occasions where he would have opportunity to have folk come together, guests to come into his house and into his place, and to be his honorees. And so he shares with us from these 2 diverse perspectives, but centering in on the same thing. As he shares with us, he now is no longer the shepherd. Not here. He's no longer the host. Not in this text. In this particular psalm, David, unlike in some of his other psalms, is not asking God for anything. He's not coming to God to complain about somebody who's hot on his trails. He's not coming to God here asking God to deliver him from this set of circumstances or that. No, here he comes to appreciate who God is.
Amen. Amen.
Here he comes to recognize God's concern and compassion in his life. So as we look at him in this text, the shoe or the sandal is on the other foot. And God is the shepherd, great shepherd of the sheep. God is the host, the one who prepares for us, provides for us, make a way for us. And if any of us have ever been to a restaurant, you enjoy a good restaurant, don't you? It's nice to be able to go to, Golden Corral, Hometown Buffet, the Wood Grill and all them other places where you can go and pick and choose what you want and just load up your plate. But sometimes, every now and then, it's just good to have a host. Can I get a witness? Where you can just sit there underneath the table and somebody will come and ask you, do you want water or tea? It's good to have a host who will make sure that you are well provided for as you sit it down. They'll come back every now and then. Make sure that everything is okay. Do you like the food? Does it taste okay? Can I get you anything else? How about dessert? You want to top that off with some dessert? Do you need that glass? And when you get one, you don't even have to ask. They see that the water level is down near the bottom, and they'll come and they'll catch it before it gets to the end, and they'll refill it. It's good to have a host every now and then. Yes. My hope is in my host. God does for us what some of us don't want to do for ourselves. When you look at either of these two descriptive allegories that David used in this text, you look at a shepherd, it's a dirty job, it's a menial job, right? You began to smell like the sheep. You began, right? And you look at a host, and I'm going to tell you something. You college student or what have you, and you need an extra job, you need some extra money, I'm going to tell you something. Waiters can make some extra, they can make some good money on tips.
Yes.
But a lot of folks don't want to be a waiter.
Amen.
They don't want to be a servant.
Yes.
But God describes himself as our host.
Yes.
23rd Psalm is one of the best known psalms that many of us have learned from childhood, right? Yes. But God wants to stop by and share with us that we can strengthen our hope in him by understanding this psalm. John Stott writes this in regards to the 23rd Psalm. He says the scene changes as you come to this 5th verse. He says, you're no longer outdoors, but indoors. No longer a sheep in a flock, but a guest at a banquet. We can go even further. God's children are his guests because they are his friends. They were not always his friends, because if you look at Romans chapter 5, he makes it very much clear that we were once at odds with him. We were once not on his side or on his team. Yes, because of Adam's deeds. Because he wanted to do it his way. Sin entered into the world, and everyone who was born after that was born into sin. But now God allows us to come into the tabernacle. God allows us to come into the banquet room. God allows us to come into the holy place as his friends.
Thank you.
Oh, God has done a mighty work. And David just stops here, right here, and he puts his kickstand down and he paused right here just to bless the name of the Lord. I don't know how often you do it. I don't know how many times you take out to just simply stop and just say, thank you, Jesus. I know there's always something that's going wrong. I know there's always a need. I know there's always something that needs repaired or replaced. I know there's something that always depressed or get on your mind. I know there's always something that keeps you up at night.
All right. Come on, Pastor.
How often do we pause and think about it? Yes, because if we'll pause long enough, we will realize that if we just meditate on the goodness of God and what God has done for me, what God has done, I don't mean to be selfish about it, but if you think about what he has done for you in your life, yes, you'll begin to realize that your hope is not in this superficial stuff that we've come to trust in. It's not in some of the stuff that we have treasured up and we have built up and we have stood on. I stopped by to tell you that moths will come and eat it up. Rust will come and decay it. But my brothers and sisters, my hope is built. Oh yes, on nothing less than Jesus' blood and righteousness. Yes, and so when we look at this psalm, and I don't mean to hold you too long, but when you look at this psalm, yes, we began to see some stuff just began to jump out at us. Yes, if we pick up at verse 5, yes, he says, you prepare a table before me in the